Welcome back to News Talk. Coming up for you later this half hour, the Skins topple the Rams in their home opener. And should Matt Williams return as manager of the Washington Nationals? Tom Threlkeld is standing by to discuss those topics. Right now, though, let's get back to our conversation with Rafi Williams, Deputy Press Secretary for the RNC, and Democrat Jamie Raskin, a state senator from Montgomery County, a candidate for the U.S. House. We're talking about the debates, the two highly watched and sort of raucous Republican presidential debates, and of course, we'll have more of those, and the Democrats will finally get to their debate schedule in the coming days and weeks, talking about whether the issues that have been discussed so far at those debates connect to the concerns of middle-class Americans. Part of the broader issue here, gentlemen, could be the gap between the parties that has grown in striking and undeniable ways. Washington Post reporter Philip Rucker capturing that dynamic really well over the weekend, I think, and I want to share part of that with you and the folks watching at home. To the Democratic candidates, the 2016 presidential campaign is about shrinking the gap between rich and poor, combating climate change, and expanding voting rights, gay rights, and workplace equality for women. To listen to the Republican candidates is to hear an entirely different campaign, one that centers on defeating Islamic State terrorists, deterring a nuclear Iran, restricting abortion, and debating whether to deport illegal immigrants and construct a wall to keep them out. At a political moment of pitched voter anxiety, candidates in both parties talk in dark, sometimes apocalyptic tones, but about different issues, as if they're addressing two different countries. Republicans are from Mars, Democrats are from Venus. Republican strategist Ari Fleischer says the gulf between the two parties has grown wider in the last decade, not smaller. Is that true, and if so, why?
Well, of course, we've seen a shrinking of the Republican Party base and a polarization of that base and a mobilization around a lot of extreme anxieties about immigrants, for example. And so a lot of the Republicans are saying, well, where does this Donald Trump phenomenon come from? I think it is the harvest of at least a decade of very right-wing talk show and Fox News propaganda about immigration, about Planned Parenthood, about abortion, a constant return to try to galvanize people around right-wing social and cultural issues. Whereas the Democratic Party, I think that we are focused on questions of solidifying and expanding Social Security, trying to deal with pay equity for women, trying to deal with lunch bucket issues relating to the growing wage gap and income gap in the country between the top 1% and everybody else. And their party has been pandering, I think, to the wealthiest people in the country and a right-wing religious base.
Rafi.
Well, I think that you have to look at the Democrats' base as splintering on itself. You look at unions and environmentalists are constantly feuding with each other. And I think that when you come to lunchbox issues, Republicans are finding, you think Jeb Bush's name of his campaign is Right to Rise, Kasich's addressing it, Ruby. You have this conversation going on across the country about how do we address, how do we get to booster the lower incomes, how do we fight for the middle class. And
what are the
terms
proposals?
Of picking, I mean, I can't list them off the top of my head, but I think Bush has a 4% economic growth proposal.
No, that's a goal. It's not a proposal.
He has a whole list of proposals he ripped out last week, and he laid it out in a policy way, and so it's going to achieve the growth of 4%. That's what he's saying, and we're having that conversation. You're just not listening to it, and that's okay, but you're a Democrat voter.
I guess America's not listening to it because nobody's hearing any of these concrete policy proposals, none of them.
It is interesting how Democrats seem not to focus on ISIS to the extent that Republicans do, and Republicans don't believe in or don't want to talk about climate change.
Wait, well, we're very focused on ISIS and foreign policy. President Obama just negotiated an historic nuclear agreement to cut off a uranium pathway, a plutonium pathway for Iran with rigorous inspections and controls.
It doesn't cut it off. It gives them the ability to get it after 10 years.
You know,
and most
in our
Americans
party,
don't agree with it.
In our party, we've had a very reasonable, thoughtful debate on it, and most Democrats have supported it. Some been against it. And Republicans, of course, they're in lockstep. They're all opposed to it because they all take the same position on everything.
No, but you guys are in lockstep against it. You're filibustering it to not have an up or down vote, to not talk about the American people. What they want is a vote because they don't approve of this deal.
That's not true. We have people on both sides. Democratic Senator Ben Cardin is opposed to the agreement. Most Democrats are for it, but what we get is an ideological lockstep in the Republican Party on these issues. I mean, even when the question of abortion rights, even for rape victims, came up, all of them said no. You should not
That's
even.
not true.
You should not even be able to have an abortion in the case of rape. Who favors that?
I mean, off the top of my head, I can't list it, but I know.
Well, what I heard, and what I think
there are
America heard in that
exceptions.
debate.
A lot of Republicans have exceptions to rape and incest. That is very true.
Okay, well,
and
what
very
I
well
heard when I
documented.
watched the debate, there was not a single person willing, at least on national TV, to stand up for the right of women who are victims of rape to have an abortion. All of them said, no, of course not.
That question, no, that wasn't a question there. The question,
that was the first debate.
They're talking about Planned Parenthood, and the question of rape or incest, Republicans oftentimes have exceptions to that.
Which ones?
I mean,
which Republicans? Because I didn't see them. All the ones I heard said, no, I'm categorically opposed to abortion, even in cases of rape and incest. It's incredible.
Not true,
they've become like a right-wing religious party in Lebanon or Syria or something like that. In terms of their unwillingness to deal with the realities that people live with in the country.
You guys are dealing with the realities of, let's talk about foreign policy, where you aren't dealing with the realities of the world right now.
I just gave you a great example of how America's leading.
But Americans don't agree with that Iranian deal because it hurts our national security interests, it hurts our allies Israel, and we've gone backwards in our world standing, and we're not taking the leading forefront.
Lots of issues here on the table. Let me pick at one and make an observation that I don't think, frankly, has been made in a lot of the discussion about the discussions we're having. Donald Trump loves to claim, rightly or wrongly, that he brought immigration to the broader 2016 campaign. What's interesting is, and people forget this, the Senate voted comprehensive, and many people have said tough, immigration legislation. It didn't come up for a vote in the House. Many people believe because House Speaker John Boehner was afraid it would pass, and he was trying to protect some members of his caucus from casting a difficult vote and what might happen to them in the next election, potentially in a primary. It would be interesting to replay history with that Senate bill at least coming up for a vote in the House. I wonder where we would be. I really do wonder where we would be on immigration right now, because that was not a puff bill. That had support from both parties in the U.S. Senate. Didn't come up for a vote in the House.
Well, I mean, this is a party that set out right at the beginning of the Obama administration back in 2008 to say we will thwart and oppose everything this president does. It's like a third grader on opposite day. I mean, you could take a position that they took before. For example, Obamacare, of course, was based on Romney's plan in Massachusetts. That was the conservative alternative to a single-payer plan. That's what the Democrats put forward, and then suddenly they decide it's some diabolical scheme. No matter what he proposed, the Republicans opposed
on that. There was no conversation with Republicans to bring them into the fold to get a bill that we all could be happy with. Instead, they forced down our throat something by party line votes.
They tried to vote to repeal Obamacare, I think, 50 or 60 times now.
Because Obamacare is
the party of negativism.
No, because you guys didn't bring in a conversation when you passed Obamacare. You didn't include both parties, and so now you're upset that one party doesn't agree when you refused to even talk to them when the bill was being decided and being passed. So you can't, complain on this issue when you didn't bring in the conversation to begin with.
There's been a lot of talk of repeal and replace. Do you think the replace part generates more traction in upcoming debates? Because as Senator Raskin says, there's been 4 or 5 dozen repeal attempts. The replace, though, I think there's probably some appetite to hear more about how you get at reform in a different way.
Well, I think you're going to look at free market solutions. You're going to look at selling health care across state lines. You're going to look at having portability with your health care. You're going to look at health savings accounts. These are all issues that Republicans want to bring to the forefront.
Should insurance companies be able to deny people coverage because of a pre-existing condition?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Should insurance companies be able to deny people coverage because of a pre-existing condition?
We're not saying that they should. We're looking at solutions. We're not saying they should. We're looking at solutions for how we can get better health care at a lower cost, because Obama
young people up to age 25 be thrown off of the insurance plan?
Less for health care. That's not happening. Health care costs are rising, double digits in many states. I mean, look, you can go on talking points all you want, but the fact of the matter is health care costs have risen despite what Obama said, and that got a lie of the year in 2013 because Obama misled the American people.
Although the number of uninsured is down, so there's something for both sides to point to. Senator Raskin, Rafi Williams, thank you very much for your time. Great conversation.
Thank you for having us
again. We appreciate your time. Up next, as we continue, 19 before the hour, Tom Threlkeld with Washington's victory over St. Louis at FedEx in the home opener.